Hey guys, this is Ms. Paredes. Welcome to Unit 1, Lesson 2, Create Histograms. Aim is how do we analyze data in order to understand what's happening around us? And the objective is I can use a frequency distribution to create a histogram. Let's start with definition of a histogram. A histogram is a display of statistical information that uses rectangles to show the frequency of data items in successive numerical intervals of equal size. You might have noticed that a histogram is very similar to a bar graph, but there are some specific differences. For example, a bar graph represents categorical data, while histograms represent numerical data. Bar graphs have spaces between the bars. Histograms don't have any spaces unless the space represents a value of 0. Bar graphs can be in any order. Histogram must be in numerical order. And finally, bar graphs have bars that depends on the number of categories. Histograms, we can choose basically our classes. So we can choose how many bars to use. All right, so let's use the example from the previous lesson about the teacher recording her students' grades. I've already gone ahead and filled out the frequency table from before. Let's use the frequency table to go ahead and construct our histogram. First thing that we want to do is we want to decide on the scale for the y-axis, which is frequency. We can see that the frequency, the highest frequency here is 9. And because the graph is not that big, we're going to go just in a scale of ones. They're going to count by 1, basically. So I'm going to start at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right. Next, what we want to do is we want to go ahead and label our x-axis with the exam score intervals. Because my minimum score is 35, I want to make sure that I draw a squiggly symbol at the beginning of my x-axis to indicate that I am jumping from 0 to 35 for the first bin. All right, so I have finished our x-axis for us. Let's start with the first class. The first class has a frequency of 1. So let's go ahead and start our rectangle from below, bring it up to 1 and back down. Next class has a frequency of 2, so we're going to do the same without leaving any gaps. Next class has a frequency of 5. Let's go up to 5. Let's come back down. Next class has a frequency of 8. So let's go ahead and go up to 8 and then right back down. Next class has a frequency of 5. And final class has a frequency of 9. After you have outlined all of your bins, bins are these rectangles, we can go ahead and shade them in. This is how you construct a histogram. Because the tail of our graph is on the left, we can say that our graph here is skewed left. There are a few things that we can observe from histograms. One of those things are histogram distribution shapes. So if you see a hump that looks pretty centered, this would be called a symmetrical shape. If you see a tail with a hump near the right end, then we can say that the distribution is skewed left. The opposite, if you see the hump coming before the tail, you can say that the distribution is skewed right. If you don't necessarily see a hump, all the data seems pretty much flat, you can say that the distribution is uniform. If you see 2 humps, you can say that the distribution is bimodal. And if you see many humps, you can say that the distribution is multimodal. Let's summarize our lesson. So in order to construct a histogram, you want to make sure you include a title for the graph. You want to label your x and y axes. You want to decide on a scale for the y-axis depending on the frequency amounts. You want to include the scale for the x-axis based on the intervals of your frequency distribution. Then you want to outline a rectangle to the proper height for each class in your frequency distribution. And finally, do not leave any spaces between the bars unless the space is representing a frequency value of 0. Thanks, guys.